Hey everyone, Santiago Morales here, and I'm reaching out for your help. My family and I recently made the move from Mexico to the United States, hoping for a fresh start. But things haven't exactly gone according to plan. You see, it all began at my new high school, Liberty Valley High. Forget your typical school drama, we're in the middle of a full-blown zombie outbreak. That's right, you heard me loud and clear, zombie outbreak. I get it. Facing a zombie outbreak is nothing like the usual high school drama we deal with. Right now, the most important thing is keeping myself safe. So, let me give you the lowdown on how everything started, and where we're at now. As I geared up for my first day at Liberty Valley High, my mom insisted on packing a lunch filled with Mexican-inspired dishes. I smiled, touched by her effort to bring a piece of home into my new school experience. However, as soon as I stepped onto the school bus, I realized the aroma of my lunch had caught the attention of my fellow students. Unaware of the delicious flavors hiding within my lunchbox, they wrinkled their noses and made jokes about the unfamiliar scent. Stepping into the classroom, I felt Mr. Chalkworthy's gaze land on me, a perplexed expression crossing his face. "Is there something I can assist you with?" he inquired, his tone tinged with curiosity. The teacher seemed oblivious to my predicament. There I stood, a complete stranger at the front of his class, feeling the weight of my backpack, nerves racking me. Wasn't it evident? Did I really need to explain it to him? Was the first day of high school this daunting for everyone? Or was it just my luck? I'm brand new here. It was the standard line for the unacquainted, the go-to phrase to escape awkwardness, or so I thought. Mr. Chalkworthy seemed unfamiliar with this protocol. Either that or he had conveniently misplaced his hearing aids. "We're halfway through the semester and you've never set foot in this class before. You can't simply waltz in here and expect me to overlook that. What's your reason for skipping out, young man?" The whole classroom was silent, broken only by the sound of stifled whispers and the weight of judgmental stares. The awkwardness hung thick in the air, suffocating me with every passing second. It felt like a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. The kind where you realize you're not just unprepared, but inexplicably exposed. "I've just moved from Mexico, sir. We settled into our new place just this past weekend," I explained, hoping it would be enough to account for my absence from earlier classes. He met my explanation with a skeptical glare, arms folded tightly across his chest. "I'm Santiago Morales. My mother was sure this information was passed along to the principal?" I pressed, trying to appeal to any sense of understanding. "Excuses won't get you far in my class, Mr. Morales. Take a seat," he responded sternly, his tone leaving little room for negotiation. It was clear that regardless of my efforts, my academic prospects under his supervision were grim. I shuffled towards the nearest empty desk. Settling into my seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard I tried to start fresh in this new town, obstacles kept appearing in my path. The guy sitting beside me rocked a Black Sabbath t-shirt. He was tall, with olive skin and a mop of curly hair, giving off an effortlessly cool vibe. "Hey, Mr. Chalkworthy is all bark and no bite, take no notice. We call him the history wizard," he assured me with a friendly smile. "I'm Lucas. Oh, by the way, I always wanted to visit Mexico." I chuckled, grateful to find a friend. Mr. Chalkworthy shushed us sharply, signaling the start of his history lecture. We endured his droning monologue until the bell mercifully ended the period. I didn't see Lucas again until lunchtime, where we found ourselves in the cafeteria line. The menu offered limited choices: French fries, mini pizzas, stale tuna sandwiches, soup, and baked beans. I opened my lunchbox, revealing the homemade meal my mom had packed, while Lucas went for the more conventional choice of pizza and fries. As we settled down to eat, a couple of kids swaggered over, sneering at the scent of my meal. Ignoring their comments, I dug into my food, refusing to let their negativity ruin my appetite. Meanwhile, Lucas devoured his pizza in record time, his belch drawing attention from nearby tables. He then gestured towards a group of kids wearing varsity jackets. "Those guys over there? They're the top dogs of the social scene. And their leader, let's call him Max Dawson, is like our school's version of Genghis Khan," he muttered with a touch of disdain. "Abigail, his girlfriend, is the captain of the cheerleading squad. Pretty much what you'd expect," he informed me. "She's stunning, so don't stare too long. And for your own sake, don't rub Max the wrong way either, okay? Trust me, if you end up on his bad side, you're on your own. Understood, I responded, giving a cautious nod. Next up is the skater crew, Lucas began, gesturing towards a bunch of kids effortlessly gliding out of the cafeteria. They're super laid back compared to the jocks. But if you want to roll with them, you gotta know how to skate. Got it, I replied, taking mental notes. Then there's the goth and emo crowd, Lucas continued, his tone turning slightly wary. They're always holed up in the art room, brooding and whatnot. It's weird, man. Feels like their numbers keep growing by the day, like there's something strange going on there. They give me the creeps, he added with a shiver, a hint of unease in his voice. So, welcome to Liberty Valley High, Lucas said, offering a reassuring smile. I hope you like it here. Just don't let any of the weird stuff put you off. After lunch, I headed to art class while Lucas went off to sports ed with Mr. Feelgood. I couldn't imagine feeling good about having to do sports. I've always hated it. As I entered the art room, I sensed a shift in the atmosphere. But I brushed it off, grateful for the decent morning I'd had so far at Liberty Valley. Determined not to be late, I made sure to arrive early. I always remembered my dad's advice about being punctual. Better to be early than a minute late. The classroom was empty when I arrived, but I heard a strange noise coming from a small room at the back where all the art supplies were kept. It sounded like wet, sloppy eating, as if a group of people were devouring barbecue ribs with gusto. As I cautiously approached, my heart began to race. As I pushed the door ajar, the sounds abruptly ceased, causing me to freeze. It dawned on me that whoever had been making those moist, chewing sounds must have heard the door's loud creak. Can I assist you? A distinct, thick Scottish accent. A figure stood before me, arms folded across his chest, his face adorned with a neatly trimmed beard and his head crowned with a shock of fiery orange curls. This wasn't just any teacher, it was Mr. McLeod, renowned for his passion for creativity. I thought I heard something inside and I'm Santiago Morales. I'm brand new here. I'm afraid you'll need to depart. The artistic gathering is a private affair. We're hosting a small luncheon, and things can get quite messy, Mr. McLeod said, leading me out the room. Of course, that's understandable. Except it wasn't, and the air didn't smell of barbecue. It reeked of iron, unmistakably like blood. As Mr. McLeod guided me towards the exit, I couldn't resist the urge to sneak a glance back. Peering into the art supply room, I was met with a horrifying sight. The same goth students I'd seen in the cafeteria earlier were hunched over a mangled figure clad in a varsity jacket. The victim's features were obscured by the frenzy of activity. As the goth students tore into him, their visages drenched in blood. Feeling a surge of horror, I quickly averted my gaze and allowed Mr. McLeod to lead me out. He seemed oblivious to my knowledge of what lurked within that room. He was involved too. He had to be. It's truly wonderful to welcome a new student like yourself. Take some time to consider joining our exclusive art luncheons. We can easily accommodate that. Our membership is expanding rapidly these days, with a surge in numbers. Mr. McLeod warmly offered. I hesitated, taking a nervous step back. I'll consider it. Fantastic. Just remember, don't be too early to class next time. The unsettling scene unfolding in the art room churned my stomach. I need to go. I think I'm going to be sick, I stammered before turning and fleeing. Ignoring my locker and homework, I sprinted straight home, where I promptly vomited. Luckily, my parents weren't home, so I wouldn't get in trouble for leaving school early. I collapsed on the bathroom floor, the events of the day swirling in my mind. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to compose myself. But the images of the grotesque scene in the art room remained etched in my mind, haunting me like a relentless nightmare. I knew I had to do something about it, but I also felt an overwhelming sense of fear and uncertainty. Tomorrow would bring another day at Liberty Valley High, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get worse. I needed to inform Lucas about what was happening. Perhaps he was already aware, or maybe he wasn't. Regardless, he was familiar with the school, and together we could take action. The next day, I found myself in drama class, sitting across from a group of goth kids. Our task was to act out a scene in a fancy restaurant, but it quickly became apparent that the goth kids weren't merely pretending. As I observed closer, I realized they were sharing bowls of what appeared to be small intestines, not spaghetti as I had initially assumed. Human brains and a heart were delicately arranged on a serving platter. To my horror, they passed a tray over to me. "Eat up, Santiago. It's spaghetti," one of them said with a twisted grin. The teacher, Miss Hawthorne, seemed oblivious to what her students were consuming. Could she be involved too? I knew I had to act fast. With trembling hands, I pushed the tray away, my stomach churning with revulsion. It was becoming clear that something sinister was happening at Liberty Valley High, and I needed to find a way to stop it before it was too late. As all eyes turned to me, I felt a wave of panic engulf me. "Come on, Santiago, aren't you hungry?" they urged. The goth kids continued to feast with unabashed savagery, their mouths smeared with blood as they tore into flesh and slurped intestines like Nissan Damae ramen noodles. My gaze fell upon one plate, and my heart nearly stopped. There, staring back at me, was the decapitated head of Mr. Chalkworthy, my history teacher. His expression twisted in anger as he seemed to scream at me to wake up. Suddenly, I jolted awake, screaming, a trail of warm drool connecting my arms to my lips where I had rested my head. Laughter erupted around me as I realized I had been dreaming, and the embarrassment flooded over me. I wiped away the drool with my sleeve, my face burning with humiliation as I glanced around the classroom. 30 pairs of eyes stared back at me, amused by my outburst. 31. If you counted Mr. Chalkworthy. "Morales, are you feeling all right? Do I need to escort you back to the principal's office?" Mr. Chalkworthy asked. I had already made a visit to the principal's office earlier that morning, having skipped half of my classes the previous day due to what I witnessed in the art room. Despite my explanation of feeling unwell and vomiting, I was still handed a punishment of after-school detention. "Apologies, Mr. Chalkworthy, sir. I'll ensure it doesn't happen again," I said sheepishly. "Make sure it doesn't," Mr. Chalkworthy replied sternly, returning to his lesson on World War II. I knew I needed to find Lucas, but it wouldn't be easy with another class coming up. As we exited the classroom, I spotted him hurriedly stashing a book into his bag at his locker. "Hey, Lucas, I really need to talk to you about something urgent," I called out. "Sorry, man. It'll have to wait until lunch. I've got to rush to a class on the other side of the building, and it takes forever to get there," Lucas replied apologetically, before disappearing down the crowded hallway. Suddenly, I heard a voice calling out to me. "Santiago, you did exceptionally well this morning in the restaurant scene." Miss Hawthorne, the drama teacher, greeted me with a warm smile. "The spaghetti was to die for," she added, licking her lips in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't help but notice a crimson stain on her blouse collar, and my heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just a dream after all. I must have fainted or become so distressed that it's all messing with my head. Trying to maintain my composure, I forced a weak smile and nodded in response to Miss Hawthorne's compliment. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice shaky with apprehension. Miss Hawthorne leaned in closer, her demeanor oddly intense. "For our next lesson, we'll be rehearsing a play about zombies," she whispered, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling excitement. "And you, Santiago, will play the victim. The goth kids will feast upon you." I felt a chill run down my spine as her words sank in. It was as if my worst fears were coming true right before my eyes. But I couldn't let her see my fear. With a forced smile, I nodded and murmured, "Sounds interesting." As Miss Hawthorne walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. It was clear that something sinister was at play, and I was right in the middle of it. I knew I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. After an exhausting couple of hours of classes, it was finally time for lunch break. I entered the bustling cafeteria, greeted by the chaotic symphony of hundreds of voices talking over each other. Joining the shuffling line, I grabbed a tray, and a moment later, Lucas appeared behind me. "Hey, Santiago, what's up? You mentioned something urgent earlier. What's on your mind?" His brow furrowing with concern, I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words to convey the gravity of the situation. "Lucas, I need to talk to you about something really important," I began, my voice low to avoid drawing attention. "It's about what happened in the art class yesterday. I saw something Something unbelievable. Lucas raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. What do you mean? What did you see? He asked, leaning in closer. I hesitated, unsure of how to broach the subject without sounding completely insane. But I knew I had to start somewhere. I saw the goth kids. They were eating someone. I finally blurted out, my words tumbling out in a rush. Lucas's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, he looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. But then his expression hardened, and I could see the gears turning in his mind as he processed the information. Before Lucas could say anything, I noticed the goth kids were now moving toward us, as if they could hear every word I was saying. Damn it. They're coming over here, I muttered, my heart pounding with unease. As the goth kids approached, my heart raced even faster. Then, to my astonishment, Max Dawson stepped forward to greet them. My jaw dropped in disbelief. What in the hell was Max doing with the goth kids? He was no longer wearing his varsity jacket, and he looked drastically different from when I had first met him the previous day. His once tanned complexion was now pale, contrasting sharply with the black painted nails, facial piercings, and the thick layer of mascara and lipstick, all in stark black. His attire had undergone a radical transformation, and he now sported a slipknot t-shirt, a symbol of rebellion and darkness. As I observed Max's new appearance, a chill ran down my spine. So that's the kid I was struggling to see in the art room, the one the goth kids were feasting on. My mind raced with a mixture of disbelief and horror. I glanced at Lucas, who shared my shock and apprehension. It was becoming increasingly clear that there was something deeply sinister happening within the walls of Liberty Valley High, and we were now face to face with the terrifying reality of it. As if the scene couldn't get any more unsettling, Abigail, Max's girlfriend, approached him, looking just as she did the previous day. Her sunny disposition and bright smile in stark contrast to the darkness that now surrounded Max. She reached out to him, trying to get him to talk to her. But Max walked right past her and ignored her completely. I watched in disbelief as Abigail's expression shifted from concern to confusion and hurt. She looked around, searching for answers, but the goth kids surrounding Max paid her no mind, their attention fully absorbed by their own dark world. A sense of dread settled over me as I realized that not only had Max been transformed, but he was now completely disconnected from the life he had known before. And if the goth kids were capable of turning Max, who else in our school could be next? Lucas and I exchanged a frantic glance before bolting from the cafeteria, unsure if the goth kids or Max would give chase. Heart pounding, we ducked under the stairs, holding our breath as we listened for any signs of pursuit. The sound of footsteps echoed overhead as the goth kids raced up the stairs. Once we were certain they had passed, we cautiously emerged from our hiding spot and made our way to the library. We should be safe in here, I whispered. Safe to plan how we're going to escape this mess. Lucas nodded in agreement, his expression grim as he scanned the room for any signs of danger. As we huddled together amidst the rows of bookshelves, I glanced around, making sure nobody was eavesdropping on our conversation. Most of the students seemed engrossed in their own activities, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards and the occasional rustle of pages filling the air. A few students had headphones on, lost in the world of their computers, while another was deeply absorbed in a book. At the librarian's desk, I noticed the librarian sorting through a stack of books that had been returned by students. She seemed preoccupied with her task, her attention focused solely on the books in front of her. I know this is going to sound crazy, but you've got to believe me. I continued, trying to convey my thoughts to Lucas, my voice barely above a whisper. The goth kids, they were eating someone in the art supply room. They had a kid in a varsity jacket, and he was cut open, like he was in an autopsy room or something, and they were feasting on his insides like it was some kind of twisted buffet. I think it was Max. They're all zombies, Lucas. Lucas fixed me with a bewildered stare, as though I had just divulged plans to blow up the school. Morales, if there's something going on with you, like ADHD or any mental issue, you need to let me know, he urged, his voice laced with genuine concern. I'm cool with being friends, but I can't handle this weirdness. I looked at Lucas, shaking my head. No, I don't have any mental issues, and I'm not crazy either, I insisted. But think about it, Lucas. The group is growing. Just the other day, they didn't have Max Dawson with them, and now he's one of them. Who knows who's next? Maybe they're not zombies, but something is definitely going on to make them act like this. We've got to either put a stop to it or find a way to get out of this school, because if we don't, we might end up like them. Lucas dismissed my concerns, treating me like a crackpot. You've been watching too much X-Files, man. Give it up. How can you be sure you'd end up like them? He retorted, skeptically. You know, I think this is all in your head. I shot him a glare, frustration boiling inside me. Because Miss Hawthorne told me I was going to be their next meal in her class, I snapped. She's going to let the goth kids feast on me alive. That's why I need your help. I'm not buying it. I think you're full of it, man. Or maybe you've just lost it. Lucas scoffed, his disbelief evident in his tone. Either way, I can't deal with this craziness. With those words, he abruptly stood up from his chair and walked out of the library without a second glance back. My heart sank as I watched my one and only friend in this school and country disappear from sight. What the hell was I supposed to do now? As I grappled with my thoughts, trying to devise a plan, the goth kids suddenly turned the corner and their eyes locked onto me. There he is, let's get him! Panic surged through me as they charged in my direction, their footsteps resonating loudly in the library. I sprinted away, my heart pounding in my chest, and I could hear the librarian shouting at them for causing a commotion. I wasn't even in Miss Hawthorne's class yet, and yet here I was, being pursued by the goth kids. Spotting the door to the restroom near one of the lockers, I dashed inside and quickly locked myself in a stall. With trembling hands, I climbed onto the toilet seat, hoping to remain undetected. As I strained to listen for any signs of the goth kids, I heard the door creak open, followed by the sound of someone using the wash basin. My heart skipped a beat as I heard a bag being opened, and then something rolling into the sink. I held my breath as the person tapped on the stall door, and a sweet voice called out, "Santiago Morales? Is that you in there? You do know you're in the girls' bathroom." The voice giggled. Startled, I cautiously stepped down from the toilet seat and hesitantly opened the door, only to come face to face with Abigail, who stood just outside, adjusting her makeup. I immediately noticed the tear stains on her cheeks. Despite her evident distress, she remained stunningly beautiful. I couldn't fathom why someone as gorgeous as her would be with a guy like Max Dawson, when someone like me would be a perfect match for her. But then again, I hadn't had much luck in the dating department. "I overheard your conversation with your friend, Lucas, right?" she asked. I nodded, confirming her suspicion. "I didn't think anyone else was around. I made sure we were in a safe spot. I'm pretty good at being discreet." Abigail nodded in understanding. "Well, secrets seem to be the name of the game lately," she remarked. "Do you have any clue what's up with Max? Can you please help me? I'd be so grateful if you could help me. It's not like him to give me the cold shoulder like this. I feel so hurt right now. If he keeps this up, I'll be spending Valentine's Day alone, because he'll be dumped." As I looked into her piercing green eyes, I knew that I would agree to anything she requested. I was willing to commit acts I never thought possible, all for the sake of this girl. "We're practically strangers," she said quietly, "but I'm in dire need of help. I can't face this alone, and given your run-in with the goth kids, you're the ideal candidate." "Okay, I'll help you," I replied. "Whatever it takes, I'm in." As she waited for my response, I could sense the weight of her expectation. She was counting on me to devise a plan. "Grab your phone," I instructed. "The goth kids have some ritual during lunch. That's when they seem to turn kids, when nobody's around or paying attention. Just be cautious of Mr. McLeod. I suspect he's involved too." "What's the plan?" Abigail queried. "We're going to gather the evidence you need," I asserted confidently. "We'll record everything." With a determined nod, she complied, and together we made our way to the art room. Upon arrival, we found the room empty of Mr. McLeod, but what we encountered was far more alarming. Max Dawson stood menacingly inside, with Lucas ensnared in a headlock. It was clear he intended to harm him, perhaps even to turn him into one of them. "Quick, hide," I urged, motioning towards a corner cluttered with half-finished sculptures. With bated breath, we nestled into our hiding spot as a bunch of kids cloaked in black attire filed into the art room. "Come on, Max, turn him," one of them encouraged eagerly. Abigail seemed distraught. "What's happening to Max? Why is he acting like this?" she whispered urgently. "Abigail, we need to record this," I said, prompting her to take out her phone and start recording. As Lucas found himself on the floor, Max sank his teeth into Lucas's flesh, eliciting cries of agony. My heart sank as I watched, feeling helpless amidst the sea of goth kids. I couldn't save Lucas, and I felt like a failure. Abigail captured the entire scene on her phone, and as soon as Max released Lucas, we slipped out of the classroom. However, our escape was interrupted by the sight of Mr. McLeod standing before us. "Can I assist you and your friend, Morales?" he inquired, a hint of suspicion in his tone. "Here to join our special lunch club, are we?" "No, Mr. McLeod, sir," I replied, hoping he would believe us. "We weren't planning to join any club. We were just passing by." He eyed us skeptically. "But you were in my classroom. What have I told you about arriving too early? You have no reason to be here ahead of time." Abigail's eyes welled with tears as she recounted what she had seen. "I saw Max attacking Lucas in the classroom," she explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "It looked like he killed him. Lucas was screaming for help." Mr. McLeod listened with a skeptical expression, raising an eyebrow in disbelief. "You witnessed what?" "I think someone's watched too many movies," he remarked dryly. "See for yourself." With a mixture of fear and trepidation, Abigail and I peered into the art room, expecting to find evidence of the horrifying scene she had described. As the door swung open, we were met with the sight of the goth kids calmly finishing up their art projects and exiting the room. Among them was Lucas, dressed entirely in black, his once brown hair now dyed jet black. He sported a Marilyn Manson t-shirt and had his nails painted black. He walked past me without a glance, completely ignoring my presence. "He's been turned into one of them," I whispered to Abigail, my heart sinking at the realization. Mr. McLeod glanced down at Abigail's outstretched hand and swiftly retrieved her phone. "Phones aren't allowed on school premises, Miss Norris. I'll be holding on to this. You can retrieve it later. Now, off to your next classes," he instructed sternly. I followed Abigail down the corridor, feeling a pang of guilt for not being able to prevent Mr. McLeod from confiscating her phone. "I'm sorry, Abigail, I tried," I offered sympathetically. She turned to me, frustration evident in her eyes. "I can't believe he took my phone. He's going to delete the video and then he'll come after me," she lamented. "Take it easy, Abigail," I urged, but she was too agitated to listen. "No, I'm so angry right now," she exclaimed. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to shake the image of Abigail's distress. Her world had been shattered, and I couldn't help but feel responsible. The next day, Abigail was nowhere to be seen, but the goth kids, Max and Lucas, were all present, ignoring me for the most part. In drama class with Miss Hawthorne, I found myself cast as the victim, pretending to be bitten by the goth kids. It was an unsettling experience, but nothing compared to what happened during sports class. Max Dawson approached me with a menacing warning, and before I knew it, I was struck by a dodgeball so forcefully that I lost consciousness. When I awoke, I found myself confined in a cage, surrounded by the entire school. Mr. Chalkworthy and Mr. McLeod were among the onlookers, and my heart sank as Mr. McLeod addressed the crowd. "Here, class, you're all welcome to try this fresh meat," he announced. Reflecting on my initial fear of the zombie play in drama class, I realized that sports had proven to be the more terrifying experience. Knocked out by a dodgeball, I found myself in a situation I never could have imagined. My disdain for sports had never been more justified.